Vanakkam. Hello friends. We have been tracing the transition that Tamilagam underwent following the waning power of the Moovendar from around 250 Common Era. Soon after this period, there arrived an alien rule into Tamilagam known as the Kalabhras. Till the beginning of the 20th century, their name remained unknown to historians, and a 300-year period between 250 and 550 Common Era, roughly between the rule of the early Pandyas and medieval Pandyas, was termed as the Dark Age of Tamilagam's political history simply because there was no information about who ruled the land. A chance discovery of a set of copper plates issued by the medieval Pandyas and their reading in the 1920s first mentioned the Kalabhras, an alien force that ruled Tamilagam. The copper plates were endowed by the medieval Pandya king Nedunjadayan Varagunavarman I, alias Jadila Parantakan, whose reign is dated to between 765 and 815 Common Era. As it related to the reinstating of a Brahmadeyam, a land grant of a village known as Velvikkudi, the plates came to be known as the Velvikkudi plates. With engravings in Tamil using Vattelithu and in Sanskrit using the Grantha script, these plates were discovered accidentally while ploughing a field, supposedly in the Madakulam regions of Madurai, according to British records. They were promptly shipped off to London and they remained safely in the custody of the British Museum. A copy of these plates was sent to the Archaeological Department of the then British Government of India as early as in the year 1893, but it remained unstudied for a very long time. The Tamil portions of the plate were first researched and published by K.G. Shankaran in a Tamil journal known as Sendamil in the early 20th century, following which the copper plate in its entirety was published by the Indian Epigraphical Society in the Epigraphica Indica in 1923. The plates threw light on the history of the immediate post-Sangam period. From around 250 Common Era, historians learnt about the rule of the Kalabhras for the first time. Until then, the scant information available pertaining to this period was collated mostly from literary sources, and that too of a religious nature like the Periya Puranam, and it didn't evoke much interest in the historians. The inscription helped them connect the dots, so to speak. The Velvikkudi inscriptions provide the earliest extant record of a Brahmadeyam, a land grant to a Brahmin priest in the Tamil-speaking regions. How and why these plates were commissioned is an incredible story indeed. One day, during the third renal year of Pandyan Nedunjadayan, a huge commotion was heard outside his court. Upon enquiry, a Brahmin priest was brought in front of the king. The priest then narrated the story of how his long-gone ancestor, one Korke Kiran Narkotran, had performed priestly services for the ancient ancestor of the Pandya lineage, Palyaga Mudukudumi Peruvazhi. Now, it is in the Velvikkudi plates that for the first time, Palsalai Mudukudumi Peruvazhi gets renamed as Palyaga Mudukudumi. We have seen about this in detail in a much earlier episode, and I will leave the relevant link here. The Tamil portion of the plates begin with a detailed inscription of this past event. The Brahmin claimed that Palsalai Mudukudumi had granted a Brahmadeyam to his forefather in return for his priestly services, and the land where the yagna was performed was named Velvikkudi, Velvi meaning a yagna and Kudi meaning a clan, and gifted to the priest. These lands lay in the fertile agricultural regions of Pahanur Kutram, near the ancient Pandyan port city of Korkai. The plates continued that after it had been in the enjoyment of the priest's family, the land was dispossessed by an alien ruler, a Kalabhran. This ruler seized the lands from the priest and returned it to the tiller. It goes on to describe how the rule of these Kalabhras continued in the Pandya lands for about 300 years, after which the Pandya king Kadungon came and overthrew them and re-established the rule of the illustrious Pandyas at Kudal. Now, another 4 generations of Pandya kings come and go, all of whom are mentioned by name in the copper plates. But during all this time, the descendants of Narkotran never laid claim to their Brahmadeyam. Then suddenly during the reign of Nedunjadayan in the 8th century, the issue is brought up and Narkotran's descendants stake a claim over the village of Velvikkudi. The inscription goes on to record how the king asked the complainant to prove the authenticity of the grant, which the complainant did. The king then reinstituted the grant and awarded Velvikkudi to one Kamakani Narchingan, headman of Korkai. The headman of Korkai in turn kept 1/3 of the village for himself and redistributed the remaining lands amidst 50 Brahmin families, reads the plate. Now, how could the Brahmin have proved the authenticity of his claim after a gap of about 700 years? A royal decree recorded on palm leaves should have withered away over time. So, was this the first case of forged documentation? Well, what the incident actually shows is the power that the priesthood had over the medieval kings. The Sanskrit part of the plate starts with prasastis, with an invocation to Lord Shiva, proceeding to praise the lineage of the Pandyas in glorious terms with heavenly associations. Though it is not relevant here, I would like to share some of the content as it gives us an insight into the systematic way in which the Brahmin priesthood brainwashed the Tamil kings into believing a very false narrative about their antiquity and lineage. Verse 4 of the Prasasti goes thus: "There was ruling at the entrance into the sea," probably this referred to Korkai, "a king famed for his matchless prowess named Pandya, who even after the 3 worlds disappeared at the end of the Kalpa Yuga, was requested again by Brahma, the creator, to rule the world when he created it anew. And the Pandya was born as the splendid son of the moon and named Budan. His son was Pururavas, who crushed the kings of giants by the strength of his arm. His family had engraved the pair of fish, its crest, on the topmost rock of the Lord of the Mountains, Mount Meru. Nedunjadayan is himself called Manupaman, meaning son of Manu, and it further reads, "Victorious is the race of Pandya kings, whose family priest is the sage Agastya, born of the pitcher, the Kumbhamuni, who stopped the rapidly growing mountain from further growth and drank all the water of the oceans." Sage Agastya is portrayed as the Kula Guru of the Pandya kings, and it also mentions that the crowning ceremony of the Pandya kings was performed by the Kurumuni, which literally translates to one who was very short of stature. I mention this here as in recent times, the legends around this Kurumuni and his contributions towards Tamil language and literature have caught the interest of many forums. Agathiyar being a mythical figure, these legends woven around him were aimed at undermining the Tamil intellect, starting with the baseless story of the great grammarian Tolgapiyar, made out to be Agathiyar's disciple. Other than being the name of a Brahmin Gotram, the Agathiyar Gotram, there is no historicity to this mythical character, and I shall be doing a separate episode on the myth of Agathiyar. How did all the medieval kings buy into these stories? And to think that we, the Tamil people, are being taken for a ride till date is definitely not something to be proud of. H. Krishna Sastri, who first translated and edited the Sanskrit portions of the plate, opined that they could have been added later on to give a dignified appearance to the plates. He was an epigraphist with the ASI, known for his work in deciphering the Brahmi inscriptions of Emperor Ashoka at Maski and inscriptions of the Pallavas. But other epigraphists have opined to the contrary, as by that time, that is the 8th century Common Era, Sanskrit, with its tag as a prestige language, had found its way into all the inscriptions of the medieval kings of South India, a trend introduced into Tamil country by the Pallavas. Now, coming back to the Tamil portion of the plates, verse 3940 of the Velvikkudi plate goes, Alavariya Adirajare Ahala Niki அகலிடத்தை களப்பரன் என்னும் கலி அரைசன் கைக்கொண்டான். The term Kali here is used to refer to the tyrannical rule of the Kalabhras. Tyrannical for whom is the question. Mailai C.D. Vengadasamy in his book Kalabhrar Aatchiyil Tamilagam, published in the year 1975, shows how the Kalabhras were a non-Tamil speaking race. They were from the bordering regions of Karnataka. They were a Dravidian race who may have spoken some form of early Kannada dialect, while their official language should have been Prakrit and Pali. They ruled over a region known as Kalabhra. The Jain religious work Vattaradhana records how a Jain monk by name Bhadrabahu from Ujjain came with his disciples and took refuge in the Kalabhra hills. He was accompanied by Chandragupta Maurya, the founder of the Mauryan dynasty and grandfather of Emperor Ashoka. Now, we saw about this exodus in detail in the previous episode. Kannada records clearly show that the region of Kalabhra came to be known as Shravanabalagola in later times. Located nearly 100 kilometers north of Mysore, Shravanabalagola literally translates into white tank of the Jains, with Bel meaning white and Gola meaning a water body, a kulam. It lay between two hills known as Doddabetta, meaning the larger hill in Kannada, and Chikkabetta, meaning a smaller hill. Now, this Chikkabetta was later renamed as Chandragiri in honor of Chandragupta Maurya. This Chikkabetta is designated as Kalabhra, shows epigraphist K. Narasimhachar in the Epigraphica Indica, volume 23. An inscription in Old Kannada found at Hosagatta Taluk near Mysore reads, Swasti Shri Madurala Kalavara Thiru Rajyadale, mentioning the Kalabhra Rajyam. The Rajyam or territory extended up to Kolar. Now, Kolar in those days was known as Kolalabura, and up to the Nandi Hills near Mysore. The Kalabhras predominantly followed Jainism, and a few of their branches followed Buddhism. With the help of inscriptions from the Karnataka regions, Mailai C.D. Vengadasamy establishes how they were feudatories to the more powerful rulers of those regions, such as the Kadambas and the Gangas. The Mysore Archaeological Report of 1927 shows how a Kalabhra ruler named Tindigan took the permission of a Western Ganga ruler named Sri Purusha before making a charity. In his book The Kalabhras in the Pandya country, Professor Mu Arunachalam describes how the Satavahana dynasty had emerged as a very powerful dynasty after the decline of the Mauryan Empire, ruling over large swaths of the Deccan extending up to the north of Mysore. The decline of the Satavahana power from around 227 Common Era saw the breaking away of many feudatory chieftains who adventured elsewhere to seek their fortunes. One such clan could have been the Kalabhras. They were not a dynasty but tribal chieftains. He shows how the Kalabhras who marched into Madurai were just one branch of a clan that set out on a predatory march from Shravanabalagola. Several branches entered Tamilagam simultaneously, with one branch capturing Kaveri Poombattinam in Chola country and another branch occupying Kanjipuram in Tondainadu. They did not occupy the entire territory of ancient Tamilagam, ruled by the Moovendar. The Pandyas were dislodged from their capital of Kudal, while the Cholas lost their overlordship over their important port city of Kaveri Poombattinam. Their descendants were relegated to smaller territories on the periphery, probably waiting for the right time to reassert themselves. The descendants of the Pandyas probably were ruling from Korkai, while the Cholas were driven west. Urayur, the once glorious ancient Chola capital, had lost its prominence, and the Chola lineage set up rule at Urayur and at Palayarai. That the Pandyas were not totally vanquished by the Kalabhras is revealed by verse 41 of the Velvikkudi grant that reads, Pandyarajan Velipattu, meaning the Raja, who was in exile till then, now emerged to resume the sovereignty. As they came from the hills of the Kalabhra, the invaders were called Kalabhurans. Later, by the time of the creation of the Velvikkudi plates, their name had been suitably Sanskritized as Kalabhras. In the light of the discovery of the Kalabhras in the Velvikkudi plates, several theories were put forth by historians as to the origin of this clan. The historian Mu Raghava Iyengar, for example, claimed that the Kalabhras were the Kalvar who found a mention in Sangam literature. For example, a Nahananuru poem goes, Kalvar Koman Pulli, and this chieftain ruled from Vengadam, that is today's Tirupati, which was the northern boundary of ancient Tamilnadu. There were others who claimed that they were the Kosars, who are also mentioned in several Sangam poems as a predatory tribe bordering the north of Tamilnadu. There was even a claim that the Kalabhras were Tamil Vellalas by confusing their name with the term Kalamar that actually refers to tillers of the soil. This confusion was due to the various names by which this clan was described in later Tamil literary works as well as in inscription. Dr. Padmavati, in her book Pudiya Nokil Kalabhrar Varalaru, Kalabhra's history from a new perspective, enlists the different names Kalappalar, Kali Araisar, Karunadavendan, Kalandai Kuttanar, Kalipagai, Vadaha Karunadar, to name a few. But thanks to more inscriptional evidence obtained later and the systematic research by scholars, the origin of the Kalabhras has been established beyond doubt. As a tribe from the Kannada regions, they must have spoken some early Kannada dialect. It is said that Kannada as a separate language was taking shape from the 1st century Common Era. So for administrative purposes, the Kalabhra rulers must have been using Prakrit and Pali. We learn that Satakarani, the Satavahana ruler who ruled the bordering lands of Tamil Nadu, issued bilingual coins in the 2nd century Common Era, which were inscribed with Prakrit on one face of the coin and with Tamil words on the other. So we can deduce that the Kalabhras also used some form of Prakrit for their official transactions. Mu Arunachalam mentions how this Prakrit could have been Ardha Magadhi with a smattering of Vadugu and Proto-Kannada. Ardha Magadhi, which literally means half Magadhi, was used predominantly by the Jains, originating from the Magadha region, from where their religious leader, the 24th Tirthangara Mahavira, preached. The Eastern Hindi languages evolved from Ardha Mahadi. The contribution of Prakrit and Pali to the development of the North Indian languages, including the evolution of Sanskrit from Old Vedic, is indeed a fascinating study and is beyond our scope here. Sanskrit carries a lot of loan words from Dravidian languages as well as from Prakrit, and without giving them their due, today there is even a reverse theory that Prakrit emerged from Sanskrit, which is being promoted by vested interests. The very meaning of the term Prakritam means natural state, while Samaskritam means that which was created, Nandraha Seyyapattadu. While Proto-Kannada might have started emerging from the 1st century Common Era from the mother language Tamil, the Sanskrit influence in the language was brought through Prakrit and Pali. With the advent of the Kalabhras into Tamilagam, there was definitely a clash of language and culture, religion and faith. The Kalabhras were not a royal dynasty, but only a predatory tribe, and as such, did not seem to be culturally dominant. They did not suppress the local language and culture as was initially believed, but they were strong in their faith of Jainism. They had propagated their religion to such an extent that at a later period, the royal house of the Pandyas themselves became followers of Jainism. One account captured in the Saivite hagiography of the 63 Nayanmars, the divine saints, known as the Periya Puranam, written by Sekirar in the 12th century, narrates the story of Murthy Nayanar, one of the 63 Nayanmars. And Sekirar writes, Kana Kadisul Vaduha Karunadar, which is believed to refer to a Kalabhra king who might have been ruling Madurai between the 4th and 5th century Common Era. The story narrates the persecution of Saivism by a Jain king and of how Murthy Nayanar, with divine help, puts an end to the Kalabhra rule. Well, I have a separate series on Periya Puranam, and I will leave the relevant link here for the detailed story of Murthy Nayanar. Today, through inscriptional evidence, we learn that the initial inroads made into Tamilagam by the Jain monks was a peaceful process, with Tamil rulers from Pandian Nedunjezhiyan to Adiyaman Neduman Anji having donated liberally to Jain monks, as is revealed by the Mangulam and Jambai inscriptions respectively. We have seen these in detail in previous episodes. Perhaps all this changed with the advent of the Kalabhras. Mu Arunachalam interestingly points out to a colloquial term that is used in the Tamil language known as Kalebharam, that means confusion and disorder. The Tamil term Kalavaram also giving the same meaning, also of unknown origin. The phonological identity with Kalabhra, the name of the clan, which caused considerable confusion and disorder in the Tamil heartland of Pandinadu 1700 years ago, was very striking, he writes. On that note, we will continue with the history of the Kalabhras and of how their role was not a dark age as was believed earlier in the coming episodes. Vanakkam.